Speaking of early rounds, I went ahead and just took Bijan Robinson in round 1, pick 5, and Garrett Wilson in round 2. Takes us to round 3, where we have already seen Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson go off the board. So looking over at, again, one of our other cool Fantasy Life Plus features, our ADP tool, I can get an idea of where these quarterbacks are typically going. And yes, on ESPN, round 2, round 3 is really that sweet spot. So Jalen Hurts normally is going off the board, pick 32. This is about when you need to go and get your guys. So Patrick Mahomes is actually pick 28. So Chris, it really does come down to Jalen Hurts versus Patrick Mahomes. And for our purposes, 4-point passing touchdown league, I think our guy is Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I would agree with that there. I mean, he was just right behind Lamar, like I just mentioned, in terms of rushing rate. And then, of course, with the projected uptick in passing volume with Kellen Moore, we could see, I mean, Hurts has a shot at breaking the single season passing record, like for the Eagles, which is famously held by Carson Wentz, which is hilarious. Like in my mind, I think it's like just short of 4,100 yards. And I think Hurts was at like 39 or something, 38, 39 last year. So if Kellen Moore brings to the table what we think he will, like there's a shot that Hurts could be the guy, like at least to reset that record.
And again, just I've talked about before, but the goal line rushing upside is truly different from any other guy out there. I mean, 16 rush attempts inside the 5-yard line last year. Josh Allen had 14. No other quarterback had more than 5. So again, it's one of those things where, yes, guys like Lamar, guys like Kyler, who you guys all know I love and everything, you know, they certainly have their dual threat upside, but that goal line rushing usage is really what has made Allen and Hurts over these last few seasons just complete cheat codes in our lovely American pastime known as fantasy football. So, all right, guys, I went ahead and just simulated the rest of the draft after, again, getting that early round QB. And as you can see, we have a cool feature where we actually rate your draft. Got a B+ overall. And, you know, one of my favorite parts is actually the position ranks where, yeah, with the quarterback and with running back, because we got Bijan and Hurts early, we are really strong. But as you see, we are considered to have the 12th best wide receiver room. That's a dead last, so not ideal. And then also the tight ends are lacking a little bit. So the overall roster, again, Jalen Hurts, Bijan Robinson. We got DeAndre Swift a bit later, Garrett Wilson, Zay Flowers, Evan Ingram is our tight end 1, Austin Eckler, and then, you know, got some just various talents on the bench. So I really do think, though, Chris, this speaks to what generally you are sacrificing when going with the early round QB. I mean, the wide receiver cliff tends to come for everyone, man, around that round 7, round 8. So if you are using one of those early round picks on a Jalen Hurts, and I also want a hero RB in terms of Bijan Robinson, guess what? I'm probably not going to be able to get one of the top, you know, 6 or 7 tight ends. Otherwise, I'm going to be really risking not getting the wide receivers that we are wanting in this situation. So I will say, again, not completely perfect strategy here. Like, I would have not taken Kirk Cousins if I already used an early round pick on Jalen Hurts. Also don't think we needed 2 tight ends necessarily, but directionally, I think very good. And again, where you see these guys going based on the most updated ADP. So again, Chris, early round QB, something that I haven't been afraid of doing, but personally, like, I'm in my home draft, it's time to go. I prefer more of the, you know, modest Anthony Richardson, maybe 2 rounds later. Ideally, and we'll find out if we can get him there in just a second, Kyler Murray in round 7 or round 8.
Yeah, those are the guys that if I can't get like the top, like elite quarterback, early round quarterback group, those are the guys that I'm trying to target, like Anthony Richardson, like Kyler, those guys that still provide like the rushing component, but still I'm not paying that early round cost in order to get it, because your point is well taken. But in the draft series that I've put out, drafting from each of the individual like draft slots, I have noted like the opportunity cost that you're sacrificing in order to get a Jalen Hurts, to get a Patrick Mahomes, to get a Josh Allen, because that wide receiver avalanche, that stuff is real, dude. Like, you are having to go through some heinous picks if you wind up getting an early round quarterback and an early round tight end, and you're foregoing some of those wide receivers that you might not think are like the number ones or like the best. I mean, Terry McLaurin in like the 3rd, 4th round, like, okay, fine. Like, you know, maybe I might be able to get a different guy later. But then if you wind up passing on wide receiver early, and you're staring down the barrel of DeAndre Hopkins as like your 2nd wide receiver, or looking at JSN or Tyler Lockett as your wide receiver, like 2 or something along those lines, it becomes a bit tougher to manage your league when your wide receivers aren't as strong as you really need them to be, especially if it's in a PPR type setting.
And again, guys, with all this, just the level of detail that we end up giving you to rate the draft, Matthew Freedman, which I mean, just look at this freaking picture. That is absolutely amazing right there.
What a
drafted most like Freedman in this one. Dwayne and Rob not quite as high on our strategies. So, what if, again, because normally, if we had more time, you're doing your thing here, you're going pick by pick, but mentions how if we had taken T. Higgins in round 7 instead of Austin Eckler, we would have received an A-. Like, yeah, we wanted T. Higgins. Thanks a lot, automation. Right. Why, we trusted you to pick the rest of the picks for us. Why would you do that? I feel like it's in a video game when, you got to challenge a play. Like, well, why are you trying to screw me over, CPU? First place,
right?
But top player, talks about the biggest values with it, and again, you have the ability to add your keepers and completely customize this to your league, just settings and everything. So that was early round QB. Again, maybe not our complete, favorite strategy, but again, I think the important thing here to remember is that any of these strategies can work. I think the important thing, Chris, is not specifically going into a draft and forcing it. Like, okay, if Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes weren't there, guess what? We're not going early round QB in that case.
Yeah, and I know that's one of the things that I stress a ton in my draft series, and what I try and do in every draft that I approach is I'm not locking myself into a strategy, especially in the early rounds where you have to take as many swings at the core positions, which is wide receivers and running backs, because what your chances of finding a starting running back in, let's say, or starting wide receiver rather, in rounds 10, 11, 12 is so much less than what you're capable of finding in rounds like 2, 3, and 4, or even like in round 1. Like the average fantasy points per game drops from, let's say, 20 points per game all the way down into like the teens, like the low teens, like once you get into this like 7th, 8th, and 9th round. So by taking as many swings as we were talking about earlier, getting your Jamar Chases, getting your Devontae Smiths, like all of those guys early, you don't have to rely on this individual player hitting. You don't have to reach for a specific guy. And that's why early quarterback isn't where I'm particularly at, because I do want to try and build out like a lot of those core positions early. But if I am, I'm trying that you can at least manage it by using some of our rankings and tiers, and also this like simulated tool in order to figure out who might be available depending on where your draft slot is.